Hey, I'm Tawnya Torres. I write dark romances with underrepresented characters. You may know me from my newest novel, A Taste of Candy.
Welcome to Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. This is a soft space to explore romance and books, where no topic is too taboo. I'm your host, Casey, and this week I'm sitting down with author Tawnya Torres. She writes dark, contemporary romance and fantasy romance. You may know her from her book, A Taste of Candy, about an unhinged, deeply adorable, and very thoughtful woman hacker and stalker who has her sights set on an unsuspecting man whose life is about to be turned upside down. We'll also talk about what inspires Tanya's writing, including the choice to write a story about a character navigating a chronic illness, pushing back against confining stereotypes, and expanding the dark romance genre through diversity and inclusion. Make sure to stay to the end when Tawnya shares a beautiful love letter that she has written for her readers. It might just be the exact words you needed to hear today. But more than any of that, I would like to state for the record that Tawnya and I had the strangest stops and starts to a podcast recording that I've ever had. Now, we not only dealt with a gang of men pounding on my door and demanding access to my home and my yard with little to no explanation, but then someone kept driving past my house at least 15 times in 10 minutes, almost causing a major accident and taking out my oak tree in the process. So, what a way to get to know someone. Tawnya was a delight through and through, and she and I have decided that we might need to co-write a cold open to a book that starts with a podcast recording being interrupted by a home invasion with one person on the other end of the recording solving the crime or saving the girl. And if I had to trust anyone to be capable of saving my life on the other end of a recording, it would definitely be Tawnya. So on that note, Tawnya, welcome to the Love Letters and Books podcast. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I want to just jump right in and talk about this book of yours that came out in May. I saw you post about it on social media and I immediately bought the book. I read it that night. Then I think I made a video all within 24 hours because I just ate it up. And that's what I just want to dive into. So I would love for you to tell us about your book and then we'll get into your characters. But what is the story behind this story?
So I started writing A Taste of Candy because at the time I was reading a lot of dark romance and fantasy romance books. And at a certain point, it kind of all felt like a lot of the characters were the same. Like all the guys are dark and brooding, all the women are petite and beautiful. And so I was like, well, what if we took like all the things that we love in romance books and we just like made it a little bit more realistic, maybe a little bit more gritty. And I like to focus on underrepresented characters. So I was like, well, what if instead of the woman being ill or having something wrong with her and the man stalking her, what if like the man had a heart condition and he drew the attention of a beautiful hacker and he just thought that no one noticed him. But then as you read the story, you realize like someone's been paying attention for a very long time.
Oh, absolutely. I loved it. And some of the words that come to mind when I think about your book are electric, refreshing. It was exactly what I did not know that I needed. It just took all of the elements that I love from this genre and kind of like turned it on its head and handed it to me on a platter of the most unhinged main female character that I absolutely fell in love with just right off the bat. And I love Jeremy too, who is your main male character, but I loved Candy. So let's talk a little bit about her as a character. What went into you developing her? What makes her tick?
So I was really inspired by the girl with the dragon tattoo and haunting Adeline. So I was like, what if we took like a hacker personality? And of course, like every hacker needs to have a vendetta. They need to have a revenge arc. So I was thinking about what would drive someone to kind of be everywhere and watching everyone all the time. And so that's why I kind of gave her the familiar family tragedy that really sets her off. But along with that, she's also very deeply in love with this man. So it's like, how does she balance being in love with this like very soft and sweet character while also like enacting her revenge. And Jeremy doesn't even realize that he's kind of in the nest of the revenge plot that you don't really find out until later on. But it's like he's kind of thinking that she just lives her vigilante lifestyle separate from him, but he's kind of always been a part of it without really realizing it.
And what was it like for you to write a main female character who almost crosses all the lines that society or literature even puts in place for us, where women can't be certain things? And I know that we can, but there's all these weird barriers that are placed in front of us sometimes. And Candy doesn't see the barriers, or she does, and she just moves right past them. And one of the things that I loved about her was that she moved almost without embarrassment. Like, she just leaned into who she was and did what she wanted, and I just thought it was beautiful. So just tell us a little bit about that part of her. Almost that unhinged part, but that really inspiring part of her.
I think that I wanted to write a female character that was shameless. Like, I think that as women, like all throughout history and society, we feel shame about our desire. We feel shame about our bodies. We feel shame about our choices. So I really wanted to take that and just, yeah, like turn it upside down. It's like, what if this character had no shame? And because even Jeremy kind of points out, like, it's very wrong that you're stalking me. It's kind of wrong that you're hacking like into the government systems and surveillancing people. Like, all this is very wrong. And she's like, oh, but like I got good reasons. And she kind of just, she doesn't really like take any flack for it. Like, she doesn't feel any embarrassment about it. She's like, no, I'm in the right for this. Like, I should be able to do this essentially. And so I also kind of feel like at the time I was writing it, I didn't really think I'd publish it. So I wrote it almost like, what if this was like just like an unhinged fan fiction on AO3 that no one ever saw? And so I wrote it like no one would read it. And I think that's part of the fun of that story.
Oh, that's such an interesting piece to this, because we probably do things a little bit differently if we know from the very beginning that we have an intention or purpose to put something out there, versus, like you said, like almost just kind of like wildly writing for yourself and just letting it loose. And I could really feel that in her. And it was something
Yeah.
that I absolutely responded to. And some of the wildest things she did, I was like, I I could see myself wanting to do that. You know what I mean? It was like you were kind of bringing to light some of the things that we wish we could do sometimes that we don't quite get to do. But oh, I loved her as a character, and I really did think that this book kind of was turning the genre on its head, where she was embodying so many of those characteristics. And then we have Jeremy, who is her love interest, who is also a very interesting character. And you made so many choices about how to bring him to life on the page. So, can you tell us a little bit more about him?
I love the movie Wanted with James McAvoy and Angelina Jolie. And I also loved Fight Club. So I was like, what if we took kind of like a lonely office worker and we made him the main character? Because a lot of times the male main character in romance books is always like a serial unaliver, or he's somehow like very scary, like an ominous presence. And so I was like, what if we make him very soft and demure and make him really realistic? I think that that's why he kind of talks about like his life being kind of boring, that he drives like a Hyundai and he works as an insurance investigator. He's like, there's nothing special about me. But I think that that's part of like what makes him so special is like he is like recognizing kind of like his normalcy, but it's like also like he just has so many quirks and things that I just thought were adorable. Like the playing video games, you know, like I feel like a lot of men do that where they're like, I don't really hang out with other people, but they go home and they make these friendships online. I think that's very real. So I wanted to put that in there.
Oh, I love that. And I think it's something that made him just so relatable, even though, obviously I'm relating to the main female character in some way, but I also loved about him just like the mundane life. Like, he's just going about his day. He doesn't think anything about him's that special. And yet, this entire time, he's had this laser focus on him, and his world is about to be flipped upside down. He has no idea. So let's get into their dynamic. And I don't want to give anything away, because I think there are so many things about this book that I would not want to give a spoiler, because it just hits so good when it hits in the book.
Mm.
But let's talk about their relationship a little bit and how they balance each other.
So, as you're writing their story and you're kind of falling in love with them in a way too about how they interact with each other, what was it about them together?
So it's kind of funny. When I first started writing the book, I thought about making Candy a little bit meaner, like that she would like in most dark romance books, the person is like a little bit mean to the other one. But as I tried to like do it like that, and I was like, this isn't working. So I was like, actually, Candy, even though she's very unhinged, she's very sweet to him. She's very nice to his family. She is a very cordial, polite person outside of kind of her vigilante lifestyle. And that's why I made Jeremy a little more sassy. It's like he kind of like is it's like he tries to resist her, but he just thinks that she's so cute. Like he's like, I really should not be in love with like this psychopath, but like she just is so nice to him. She tries so hard to like make everything good in his life. And so he's like, well, it's like I almost can't be mad at her, even though everything that she's doing is wrong.
Oh, that is perfect. Totally. And she turns him into her baby girl. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly, at the end of the
baby
day,
girl.
he is baby girl. And I loved that about their dynamic. And so that kind of leads me into the discussion about power dynamics in relationships and how you wrote about them, which I thought was really beautiful. And I also thought reading this book, it might be the first time that someone sees that in media, on a page, in a movie, TV, or something like that. Like your book could be one of those where the power dynamic isn't this power struggle, even if it doesn't follow the normal path. And I say normal, like I'm using air quotes because that's not even a real thing, but where Candy, to some degree for most of the book, is taking the lead, and Jeremy is almost not pained by it at all, which is, it just pushes back on stereotypes. It pushes back on what the world is telling us about what we should do, who we should be, and what would make us feel fulfilled and happy in relationships. So let's take a look at that part for a second, just the power dynamics. Why was that so important in your book and in their relationship?
So I noticed, like, again, in a lot of the books that I love, there always is that struggle where it's like they're kind of like butting heads. But I really wanted to bring something like new and fresh. And I was like thinking about how, what if like a man just like didn't feel like he needed to be the lead or be what embodies like masculinity? And there's a couple lines in there that kind of humor me. Like, he has his work beef with Justin. And there's like a part where he says something about like, why do you kind of like let Candy do everything for you? And Jeremy just wants to make him mad at this point. But there's very much truth to this where he's like, well, I just like to turn off my brain and let her do all the deciding for me. And he does it to be rude, but there's also like truth rooted in it, I think.
Yeah. And I loved that part of the book, specifically that interaction where the guys are kind of giving him a hard time and he just leans into it. It's almost like he melts into this dynamic that he knows she kind of needs, and maybe he didn't realize that he needed. And it's so beautiful how it's unique and it works for them and it doesn't have to work for anyone else. And they both still feel like they have their identity. I just thought that was really beautiful about the dynamic. And he's still a very much a present, grounded partner. He's a huge part in the relationship. It's not like it makes him invisible. It just gives him almost more freedom to be who he wants to be, maybe who he didn't know he wanted to be in relationships. So I absolutely loved their dynamic. And I loved that she just doesn't have a mean bone in her body when it comes to him. And she's just all in, present. I just like every time I think of her, I just think of like pink, sparkly neon
Yes,
energy.
yes.
Best
Pink
way
and sparkly
possible.
and cute and hearts and like anime princess
Yes,
eyes, like just like, yeah, everything's so cute about her.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? I didn't know that I needed that because I read your book and I was giggling the whole time. I was annoying my partner because I kept interrupting him to be like, and then she did this. And he was like, that sounds like you. I was like, oh, leave me alone. Oh, well, I absolutely loved that, and I'm so glad you shared that book with us, and I'm saying that because, as you mentioned earlier, like, it kind of started as something you didn't know that you were going to share, so can we touch on that for a second? What takes you from, like, a passion project or something you're doing for yourself or just something that feels like it's creatively pouring out of you and transitions it to, "Oh, I'm gonna publish this. I'm gonna put this out there. I really believe in this."
I think I kind of, I wrote it like no one was going to read it. And then I was just talking about it. This was when I was mostly on Instagram. I'm kind of new to TikTok, but on Instagram, I just kind of started talking about this project I was working on. And it was two friends that I hadn't seen since like high school or like a really long time ago. And they're like, hey, this is like not normally like the kind of book that I would read, but I'm really interested in this. So it's like the fact that like I was like kind of like joking around, like, I want to write a dark romance more geared towards male readers. And then two people that I knew reached out to me. I was like, okay, well, I'll let you guys take a look at it. And I kind of thought that they would just like forget about it or not read it or like lose interest. But then they both came back to me and they were like, the male loneliness is so accurate. It hurts. They're like, he is like so me. I like can't even like handle it. Then it was like, to them, they were like, I feel like I would read more romance books if I felt like I could relate to them. And that's when I was like, oh, that's when I had to share it. Is like, yeah, I think a lot of men will dog on romance because they do just see like the broody guy that has all the money, all the tattoos, like everything about him is like so sexy and perfect. And it's just unrelatable. So I was like, well, what if we did try to write more books that other people can enjoy besides kind of like basic romance readers that like, I mean, I love that sort of stuff, but sometimes you need something
Love it.
refreshing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but you sometimes need the thing that you didn't know you needed, which is actually a beautiful parallel with the book. Like, he didn't know he needed this. Candy knew, but Jeremy didn't know. And I feel like that's such an interesting thing when you experience it yourself and the things that you're drawn to, maybe you're surprised by. So let's talk about the choice to write a book about someone with a chronic illness and what that looks like for you as a writer and what you really wanted to stand out for the readers. Because to be honest, there are books touching on different topics, right? There are books that touch on chronic illness, and we can definitely find them, but it's also not mainstream. So, what about that part of his life and personality made you want to bring that into the story? And what goes into that for you as a writer? How do you prepare for that?
So I deep dived a lot on like Reddit, like looking up just like what it was like to live with chronic illness. I have a friend who has lupus, and I kind of just, asked them, like, I was like, I'm not trying to be nosy, but like, can you kind of give me like an outline of like what your day is like? What does it feel like? What is it like to try to be romantic with someone? And I find that a lot of people with chronic illness find it really painful to just get up in the morning, let alone have really complicated relationships. And so I was just thinking about how there's just so many books that I think don't exist because people are afraid to write them because people want to cancel them or are angry that it's not portrayed a certain way. So I was like, well, what if I just went for it and just tried my best to try to be as compassionate and accurate as I could be to tell this story? Because I think it really adds something to literature. I think that there's just so many books that are kind of, yeah, like we were talking about, like all the same character. But I was like, well, what if we bring someone real into this? Someone that like a lot of people could relate to.
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting about the intention behind it, right? Doing the research, asking people, checking in with yourself, being clear on your purpose behind writing it, and then almost surrendering to the fact that we all have unique experiences, even if we have the same diagnosis, even if we have the same condition, and people are allowed to be flawed. People are allowed to manage their condition in whatever way they want to. People are allowed to have hard days. So I thought it was really beautiful that you shared this full perspective of Jeremy's experience and how it affected his life, his work, his family, his romantic partnerships, and just having it brought onto the page in that way was really powerful. Have you received feedback about that?
So I've received actually nothing but positive feedback so far. I haven't had anyone get mad at me so far, which I think is beautiful. I've had people reach out and be like, I have chronic illness and I never see this in books, and it made me feel seen. And that's really what I wanted. I just think that it's like sad that like there could be probably like an array of more like inclusive books, but people are too afraid to write them because the backlash. But I was like, I'm just gonna go for it. Like I had so many people be like, I'm really glad that you did this, that I was like, even if other people get mad, like they aren't the people that are seeing it for what it is. Because it wasn't a cash grab. It wasn't like I woke up and was like, oh, I'm gonna write this like super controversial book with like a chronically ill man to make money. I was like, I just want to bring something new. Art is like a
Yeah.
conversation, and we go back and forth. And I
Yeah.
was like, I feel like this hasn't been part of the conversation, at least for very long. So I was like, I just wanted to kind of add to the conversation, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely does. And I think how often we overlook when the media portrays women in a certain light or tries to cover an experience or a diagnosis, and it's become so normalized the way that happens that sometimes we don't even flinch when it is cringy or it feels really off the mark. So I love that you've had a really positive experience with this book and this character because, yeah, just as a reader, I really responded to him. And I thought you wrote about him with so much compassion and it felt real. Like I'm not looking at this perfect person who is navigating a condition. I'm dealing with a man who's really complex and layered and has bad days and he's sassy and he has all these other things going on. And no, it was really powerful and it added so much texture to the story. So are you interested in writing characters who are maybe not following the pattern? Is that something that you're finding you're enjoying?
So I didn't even realize, like, when I first started writing, that I guess that, like, almost all my books, they're not all like A Taste of Candy, but they kind of are. Like, they all focus on an underrepresented character in some way. So my debut novel is A Silent Discovery, which is about a mute princess, and it's told from her point of view. And since it's a fantasy, I kind of took some liberties, and it's like, royal people know how to read, but other people don't. So she can only communicate with certain people. And even then, it's like kind of like the royal people are interested in knowing what she has to think or say. So it's like her trying to navigate a world like that. And then she has an arranged marriage with a warlord that is supposedly very like heartless and ruthless. But then he is so sweet to her, it really sees her for who she is. And then I have another book, At the Castle of Eternal Winter, which is kind of like the Phantom of the Opera. In this case, the woman has to wear a blindfold in this man's presence because she thinks he's ashamed of his stutter, but as you read the book, you find that there's more to it.
Interesting. I love that you're talking about other books in your catalog. And for anyone like me, who after they read your book immediately wanted to do a deep dive, when you go on Amazon, it was just a little confusing because there was almost like two accounts under the same name. And those are your books. So I'll definitely put a link in the show notes so that anyone who is interested can access them and read more of what you've written.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, can you share with us a little bit about your publishing journey as we're talking about your catalog? How long have you been doing this and what inspired you to publish your first book?
So I've only been doing this for like a little less than 3 years. And what actually really inspired me to start writing was I lost my job twice during COVID. And so I had 9 months where I didn't have to really worry about money and I didn't have to work. And I felt so lost, Casey. I like sat there and I realized that I was like, I've just been like working away my life and I like don't know who I am anymore. Like I remembered that I used to really like drawing and painting and like telling stories. As an adult, I was like kind of like sad almost. Like I was like, who have I become? And so during that time I started with like watercolors, acrylics, started like drawing like kind of like little anime, like little short graphic novel kind of things. And then I was like, well, what if I like pick up my laptop again? And so then that's kind of what started it, is just like I feel like I didn't really think writing was going to be my thing. It was just like I knew that the arts called to me, but I didn't know what I needed to do. And I had been like just kind of in the grind, in the hustle mode for so long that I was like, I need to rediscover that part of myself. And so I started writing. I think it was like in the end of 2020. And then I got my book published at the end of 2022. I'm published through a couple different people. And I think that that's why if you go on Amazon, it can look like a bunch of different people. It's because it's just different companies, like small presses, publishing my
Yeah.
work.
Well, I love that you shared that story of dropping into your creativity during a really strange time in the world. And I have to tell you, I really relate to what you were saying and being stuck in the grind. I feel like that was sort of that was my zone for a very long time, and it is so normalized, right? Like, it's so normalized just to crank out work and to make money and to kind of be in survival mode. And then I remember during COVID, I was looking for a new job, And I was talking about it with my partner, and we were very fortunate at the time. And he said, what if you didn't rush? What if you didn't feel this sense of urgency during the worst time in history? And instead, what if you were just creative for a while? And I remember at the time thinking that I almost had to ask someone's permission to do that, if that makes sense. Like I just had
It
so not
does.
allowed myself, right, to like just relax and be creative and explore, much like you were saying, in multiple mediums and say, oh, what sticks? I'm a creative person. I'm interested in a lot. And the funniest thing is that at that time, because there was no pressure and, I was encouraged to do this, I started the mental health podcast, Love Letters and Mixtapes. And I don't know, it was like lightning striking. I turned on the mic, started recording, and all of a sudden, like it just worked. And that's very funny because in this dropping into creativity, that's what led me to the work I do now. They saw a post of mine online, the company I work for now, and they were like, how would you like to build a podcast department for blah, 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 the company I work for? And I was like, sure. And it was that moment, almost like you're saying, of dropping into creativity and not knowing where it takes you, right? Like you could have never imagined during the worst time in history to not be with a job and to have this free time and just start with painting and end up publishing books that people are like, oh my God, I love it. I want to talk to you. It's so good. And I just really like that.
It's like weird how one day it just makes sense, like you with your podcast, it's like you don't think that's what you're setting out to do. But when you get there, you're like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. How did I not think of it before? But it's like you kind of have to be like peel back the layers to get
I
there.
know. And it's so funny how the stress of our lives, the stress of the world, the way we're all sort of spread pretty thin can kind of block us from that. And that's why these conversations are important because someone could listen to us and be like, oh, well, that worked out for you. But it's like, yeah, I would still encourage myself and all the resistance I sometimes have to allowing myself to be creative. I'd still encourage myself that that's a really valuable, untapped part of your life. And that's almost what I'm hearing you say as well of like, it could be a crisis or it could be an opportunity when I'm without a job. And you just kind of leaned into it and you've opened your world up in this way. What would you 5 years ago think about this if you just showed her a snapshot of you being on a podcast talking about your book? And my podcast is not even that special. It's just the fact that your book was so great that somebody reached out to you and was like, oh my God, I need to talk to you.
I think that I would be like so beyond myself because that was like a thing too when I didn't want to write, I think, because I didn't think anyone would care what I had to say. Like I think it's like I know that that sounds really really downer, but I think that we all kind of like struggle with
Yeah.
like, well, what is it about me and my thoughts that like anyone else would care about? But through like podcasts and books and all sorts of like literary magazines and things like that, it's like we find that we like all sorts of snippets from people. Like we don't even know why we like them, but we just
Yeah.
do.
And why are we so tough on ourselves about creativity when you have no idea why something hits? Like why a song just like clicks for you, why a piece of art motivates you. Like you have no idea. So that's what I love about this conversation. And I hope that there's one person out there who listens to this who's like, you know what? I'm going to actually like pause the grind for a second and not feel like I have to ask permission to be creative. Like we're just allowed to be creative on a daily basis. I don't know what that is about. I should probably explore that on the mental health podcast, but I don't know what that is about me where I feel like I'm not allowed to do that. But that's why I love these conversations. And I would never have known that when I picked up your books. That's why talking to you is so interesting and hearing about your journey and what's come out of this time in your life. So let's also now look to where do you want to go? Like, where are you going in the next few years in your creative journey and your writing journey? What can we expect?
I don't really have like a full vision. It's like I know I just don't want to stop. Like I've had so much fun. I've made like so many like friends through my books, like just like people reaching out to me or even like people that I haven't talked to since like high school, like reaching out to me and being like, "Oh my God, I really care about what you have to say and I want to see this." Like I think that I want to just keep sharing regardless of like what it is that I'm sharing. I'm not really like I need to be like a bestseller, but I do think it would be cool to be noticed a little bit more because I think that like I want other people that like maybe they are, suffering from like a chronic illness or maybe they have a disability. I want them to feel seen in literature. And I think that romance suffers the most from just like not having a lot of like inclusion. And I think that that's why like some people are really hard on romance novels. And I'm like, you just haven't found the right ones. Cause I think that when you do, you're like, you see a full array of emotions and just you can learn so much from them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I know I read a book recently, and even in that book, they were talking about being on medication. And I realized how we so rarely hear about that in books and the effect it has on you, and how it's something that you're bringing up in a relationship, or you're talking about that in your intimate partnership and like how that shows up. I just thought it was really beautiful. And I think it would be amazing if you showed up again in that space and wrote a book. But for all those listening, we have an amazing book idea, because when we sat down to start this recording, a bunch of men rolled up to my front door and I had to pause this and answer while Tawnya just patiently waited in the background watching me disappear off screen. And I feel like that could be the hardest cold open of a book ever. So that might be your
Yeah, and
next book
I'm like
idea. Who
scared. I'm
knows?
like waiting for you to come back. I'm like, I hear voices. I hope she comes back.
I hope I don't hear like a thud and a scream. But no,
It's gonna
that
be
could
like
be
a
the next
simple
one.
favor or something, and I'm gonna be like, "How do I help her?"
Exactly. This girl I barely know. But I love that you're keeping your journey open. And I feel like we're all going to be really excited to see what comes next. And I hope that you are dropping to the space and really able to enjoy this. Personally, I just love your social media. I think you're like the funniest person out there promoting your
Oh,
books.
thank
Every
you.
time I see her on TikTok and Instagram, I'm like, she is so funny. It looks effortless. I'm sure that, there's more effort behind it, but I think you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. I thought about going into comedy if my books didn't pan out. Like, I was like, well, what if I was
Yeah.
like a dark romance comedian, like brought that energy to the stage? And I was like, I could probably still do that too, but maybe in the future. We'll see what happens.
I absolutely could see you doing that. And I barely know you, but just from what I've seen, I can see that. So talk to me about what writers, what books really inspire you. What do you love to read? And don't be self-conscious. Tell us what you really like. And what books are you looking forward to?
Ooh, so even though it's not like I feel like my style doesn't resemble it in any way, I love Chuck Palahniuk's books. Like they're just so gritty and weird, and like I think that like every character, they always have like something a little bit wrong with them, and I think that that's kind of what drew me into genres like that. Like just like an imperfect narrator. And I also love Alice Hoffman's books. Like they're also whimsical and like sad and beautiful at the same time. I feel like they really focus on like not like necessarily female rage, but like the Dove Keepers. I felt like really focused on like women stepping into their power and being the main character. And I really love that about her books. Like there's just something about them. Like, and I think a lot of people like Practical Magic, but I really love the Dove Keepers. That one sticks with me. And the Museum of Extraordinary Things, that one's like kind of speculative. It's like a girl that can hold her breath for a long time, and her father like puts her in a tank and has her dress up like a mermaid, and people pay to see her. And it's like it's very unique and interesting. So I just like odd concepts like that. And I just
Yeah.
got into indie books recently. So I got some of Meg Smitherman's books. I love her book Thrum. She writes like these really short sci-fi, like horror, romance, thriller kind of books, and I really love them. And then I also found it's not normally like a book I think I would pick up, but I just love her social media. Cass Skeller, she goes by like Whiskey in Wonderland on Instagram, and she just like kind of like said something about it being like a retelling of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and I was like, well, that seems like a nice like comfort read, and I loved it. Like it had so much like sassiness. But then it was like the broody male character and his brothers like taking care of her and like trying to help her get home. And it was just like so sweet. I've been really enjoying indie books because they offer something fresh, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for that full list. That's everyone I'm purchasing as soon as we get off this call. So that was amazing. No, but I really do. And I feel like I've had such a good time in the last few years doing those deep dives and finding new writers that I'd never heard of, and the indie authors, and just really enjoying that space and finding those stories to be so refreshing and so interesting, and just really loving the characters. So thank you for sharing that with us. So, Tawnya, I am a little bit of a stalker on your social media, and I pay attention to everything you post. And one of the things I saw you post about was your audiobooks. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because you have kind of a unique situation there.
So I was encouraged by my publisher at White Cat Publications to try narrating one of my books. And I was really scared to do it because I was like, I don't really know if I have like the best voice or like the best cadence. But when I was younger, I always liked to tell stories to my friends, or like, when you go camping and you tell people scary stories. So I was like, well, what if I try bringing that energy to my romance novels? And then I actually ended up having a lot of fun with the silent discovery because it's told from her point of view and she's mute. So I was like, not only is it like I kind of gave her a voice, but it's like I am her voice. And I got to like, make it more easily accessible to other readers to hear her voice. And I thought that that was really cool. And then the other one I did was The Heart of the Machine. And you're going to have to suspend your disbelief just a little bit because that one is from the male point of view. But I kind of thought it was fun, like to get up every day and was like, I'm going to pretend to be this mad scientist that falls in love with a cyborg. And I thought that that was really fun and kind of unhinged in its own way. And so, yes, it's me reading it and it's a male point of view, but I think that it turned out pretty good, actually.
I just love that you're just kind of bubbling over with creativity and bravery. And I just like see you being willing to try all of these different things. And it's really inspiring, not to kind of creep you out with the compliments, but it is really interesting when you see people who are willing to do these things and just say, well, I've never done it before, but then I did it. And I feel like, is there any message that's more powerful than that? I think that's such a beautiful message to put out there. So I don't know. I just want to say thank you. That's maybe what I needed to hear on this
Oh,
Friday.
thank
So,
you. Do you
all right.
ever talk about like things in books, like phrases or like words that you're just like, why did the author choose that word or say that sentence that way?
I feel like I I mean, if you want to know my thought process behind it, everything I do for work is so dry. I wrote about multiple myeloma all day for like 8 hours.
Oh
I
my
wrote about
goodness.
it. And do you know what I mean? Like, and that was just like, that's like kind of an exciting day. So everything I do is so dry all day long that I feel like my brain is so lit up when I finally sit down and read a book that I'm like, I have no thoughts in my brain, right? I'm like Jeremy. I'm just like, I don't want to think right now. Like anything
Yeah,
you
I don't
throw
want
at
to
me,
think.
I'm probably going to love. I'm probably like a writer's dream because I'm very, very easily entertained.
I think I'm more about the vibes as well. Like, I'm not really like, oh, the book
Yeah.
needs to be perfect. It's more about the vibe. But I was just asking because I just got done reading. I really liked it. It was A Ship of Bones and Teeth. But there's just like certain phrases, like, and I knew it was a fantasy book, but I was like, it just kind of made me giggle. And I was like, ooh, like, the intimate scenes, like, she just used the term to the hilt a lot. And I was just so like, oh my goodness, like when something's just so unhinged and you're like, oh my gosh.
To the hilt. No, I
Yeah.
love that. You know what's so interesting about being a reader, right? You are being exposed to the language that somebody would use maybe in their own life, maybe in their fantasy life, maybe in whatever, but you are being exposed to things that are so different. And it's interesting because I've had so many of these interviews and I've talked to authors who are like, yeah, it is really interesting, especially when you're writing like an intimate scene and you're writing about something that's just like something you'd do on a Tuesday. And for someone else, you've just blown their mind. They've never heard of that before. And like
Yeah.
what that's like to hold that space, right? To create that and to not know the response you'll get back because your audience is almost anonymous at some point. I mean, just that alone is really interesting to me and how people put themselves out there. And I always think it's not lost on me that every single thing I've created or put into the world, I could hit a button on my computer and delete it in, half a second and it would be gone from the internet. But I think it's so much different for writers. You're really putting yourself out there and you have no idea where it ends up and you really can't pull it back. And I think that that's just my own anxiety. I'm not putting that on anyone else, but I'm just saying that.
I do think about that though, like things like aging, like I just remember being like 13 and like stealing my mom or like my friend's mom's like those old Harlequin romance novels, and just like some of the language that they would use like from the like 90s, early 2000s, like it would be so
Yeah,
dated now. Like if you like sometimes I find those books at Goodwill and I have to pick them up because I'm like, it's just
you
gonna give me
have
like the
to.
nostalgia, but there's just like the certain phrases and words for the intimate scenes that just kind of like it'll make me blush a little bit and I'm like, oh my goodness.
No, that's so funny that you mentioned that because I was interviewing someone else earlier this week and we were talking about growing up reading V.C. Andrews books and how it was totally normal in elementary school and middle school to be reading like Flowers in the Attic on the playground. And first of all, like, where did I go to school? Like, why are they letting children do that? But just thinking about, that sort of that time frame and the language that gets used there, and then thinking about, wow, you wrote this really edgy, fun, unhinged book, and like, that's going to be so fun though when you look back on 20 years and you're like, yeah, what words did I use? Like, how did I describe Candy? Who was she then? And she was so edgy, right? And different and unique when you wrote her, and then you just kind of wonder where the genre is going to go in the next few years.
I am intrigued to see, like,
Yeah.
like with book talk and everything, I'm like, what will the next generation of like books and readers be like?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of discussions about point of view, third person versus first person, and just the impact that has on our brain and processing and writing. So I would even like to ask you, like, what is it about writing first person point of view and bringing us into that space where we're, deeply connected to those characters? What about that appeals to you as a writer?
Ooh, so I think a lot of my love for like the first person present tense comes from loving fan fiction, as like a teenager. Cause I think that like at the time, a lot of like traditionally published books, I don't think that self-published books were like super popular when I was a teenager. Or if they were, I didn't really know about them. I just knew like the big books. And I think that almost all of them were third person, past tense. Like that was just the proper way to write a book. But then when you would go like find like a fan fiction of like characters that you liked, and it was like almost all of them were written first person present tense, and it just felt very like fresh and fun. I think it wasn't until like I read the Hunger Games series when that came out in like the 2009 or 2010. I think that was one of the first times I read like an actual book that was written first person present tense, I'm pretty sure. And I was like, oh my gosh, Katniss, I feel like I can like relate to you so much more now,
No, definitely. And I do. I wonder where the trends are going to take us, and also where online communities take us and how they shape the medium, how they shape the readership, the reactions, all of those things. And yeah, no, I'm just really curious about it. And again, I don't think I'm the most active member. I think I kind of just am like delighted to pick up a book at the end of the day. I don't think I have any really strong hot takes. Like, there's definitely things I like, things I don't like, but I am really interested in it. Well, Tawnya, I am so excited that I was able to sit down with you today and talk to you about your book. I was so intrigued by you, and I feel like I've gotten to know more about you, and I hope the listeners have as well. And one part of this podcast is the love letter part, where I always invite my guests to read a love letter either to their younger selves or to their readers. So I would love to just turn the floor over to you and have us hear your love letter.
All right, so I wrote my love letter for my readers. Dear reader, I have been looking everywhere for you. I'm so glad to see you. Lately, I've been thinking about stories and the impact that they have on people. What if you felt like a book was written just for you and you felt seen and like someone heard the whispers of your heart? When I write a story, I don't write for the masses. I envision one person, a single individual who could benefit from these words. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being you, because my books wouldn't exist without you, the reader. I love creating stories about people who are often overlooked in literature because I think these are the people who deserve to be the main character the most. I don't necessarily want to change or reinvent romance, but I hope to bring inclusion, understanding, and something fresh to the genre. When you read my stories, I hope it feels like a hug. Even if we've never met, I see you and I know you. You are always welcomed here. Love, Tawnya.
Oh, Tawnya, I love that. And you know what? It did feel like a pink, fuzzy, bright, electric hug from a stalker named Candy. That's what it felt like reading your book. So
Oh.
thank you so much for sharing that with us. And for those listening, where can we find you? What platforms are you on? Where do you like to connect with people the most?
So I hang out on Instagram and TikTok. I feel like my TikTok is a little more active these days. And you can find my books on almost all platforms because I'm published through Ingram, through my other books. So you can get them like not just through Amazon, but you can also get them through like Kobo and Everend and stuff like that. But A Taste of Candy is my first self-published work. And so right now that one's just going to be on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited and Kindle.
Okay, thank you. And I'll make sure to put links in the show notes so that anyone listening can just click down there and connect with you. Well, I really, really love talking to you today. I'm so glad that you joined us. And I really hope that you come back and have a chat with us soon because I would love to hear about your next book.
Yes, and now I'm like really excited to write like some scenes in that book because I'm like, I think I'm going to take a little bit of the jarring situation that happened earlier because I think it would fit really nicely in the story, actually.
Oh my God, I would love that. I would love to see my frightened little face and energy in your book. So, on that note, thanks for coming to talk to us.
Thank you so much, Casey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can find me on both Instagram and TikTok at Love Letters and Books. And if you're interested in being a guest on Love Letters and Books, suggesting your favorite author, or just want to write in an original love letter to yourself or someone else to be read on air, please send me an email at lovelettersandmixtapes@gmail.com.